Jill Duggar Dillard nearly lost her life while giving birth to her second child. In her new memoir, Counting the Cost, the former Counting On star got candid about her harrowing experience welcoming son Samuel in 2017. She wrote that she'd been pushing for half an hour when the baby stopped descending, and she was feeling weak. Jill wrote, "The pain had been excruciating until I'd been given an epidural, but I was losing all my energy to push. I was feeling weak and tired. I tried to summon that voice that would tell me to tough it out, but it was on mute. I can't. That was all I could say." Her doctor then told her that the baby's heart rate was dropping and not recovering fast enough after contractions, and she needed an emergency C-section. As Jill was rushed to the OR, she suddenly, quote, "felt as if someone had just sliced me open on my side." The reality star had an epidural, and she wrote that she thought to herself, if the pain was strong enough to break through drugs that strong, something was seriously wrong. She added of the operation, "I heard someone else shouting about the amount of blood I was losing, and another person yelling as they counted every instrument and every item the doctor put inside me. But another thought within me was even louder. This is it, Jill. This is where you and the baby die. This is the end. There's no more need to tough it out." Jill woke up hours later to her husband, Duggar Dillard, telling her the doctors had saved her life. He explained that she'd had a uterine rupture with a hole as big as his fist. He told her she lost half of her total blood volume, but got a blood transfusion and was able to keep her uterus. Samuel was taken to a different hospital's NICU, and 4 days later, Jill was released and finally got to meet him face to face. Jill wrote of her newborn's condition. Samuel had been unresponsive at birth. He'd been oxygen deprived for a little while during the rupture and swallowed some meconium. When he came out, he had been limp in the nurse's hands. When I finally got to hold him in the NICU, I experienced the slow, dawning realization of just how close Samuel and I had come to death. A scan showed signs of bleeding on Samuel's brain, which could have caused permanent damage. But after an MRI 3 months later, a neurologist revealed that he miraculously had, quote, "no lasting damage at all." Samuel is now 6 years old and the second of Jill and Derek's 3 boys. The two are also parents to 8-year-old son Israel and 1-year-old son Frederick. In Counting the Cost, Jill got candid about raising her own family, as well as growing up as part of the Duggar family and having their life televised on 19 Kids and Counting. Jill didn't hold back in the book when sharing the challenges she and Derek faced on reality TV, as well as within her family and the culture she was raised in. In a recent interview with Access Hollywood, she and Derek spoke about their life now and why they wouldn't return to reality TV.
Growing up on reality TV, I would want to protect our kids and not decide their lives for them. And I feel like that's also something that parents, our generation, are facing. Everybody is. Like, how much or how little do you involve your kids on social media? You know, like, that's like a huge thing.
I think there are public figures whose kids you know nothing about. There's a lot of protection, but then there's others where it's just like they're relying so much on their kids. If it weren't for their kids, then the whole business plan falls out. And I think that's the dangerous part about it is it got to that point with the show. Like, after a certain point, so much was about the adult kids' relationships, their marriages and births, that if you had adult kids who chose not to do that, or your own kids who didn't want to be a part of that,
you wouldn't have a show.
You wouldn't have a show. Yeah. So I think it's important to not set up your life in a way that depends on your kids. Like, if it touches on that at some point, like, that's one thing, but if it depends on them and you're using them, then that's where it's dangerous. Then it can evolve into, the danger.
I do.
I think the main thing that keeps our love so strong is just the decision that we made on our wedding day and the vows that we kept, and that God was at the center of our relationship. And there are days that you don't feel the same. From every day you're going to feel different, but it's just a choice. Like, I think just choosing to give 100% each other to the other one.
Yeah, and I think, like, whenever we were facing some of these challenges where it got really intense and we would be fighting about something, we had to decide. Like, there were like moments where I woke up and was like, I'm gonna have to decide, where I was put between a rock and a hard place. You know, it's like, do I choose my family or do I choose my husband? And I think a lot of people probably get put in that place just in life where it's difficult decisions, whether it's boundaries or whatever. And I was wanting to go in line with like where we were feeling directed and called, but there was so much pressure from family to go a different route. And then you add like the TV show on top of that, and it created a mess. And like the teachings that we were under at the time as well, like the religious ideas where you had to really fall in line with your parents forever, kind of. the whole honor your father and mother thing taken as like an obedience, even into adulthood, was very problematic and carried into our lives. Something that was really helpful in our parenting now, where we're at, we realize nobody's perfect and stuff, but we went to a parenting or a marriage class thing one time, and they were talking about principles that anybody can really live by, but you kind of take what you've learned from your families, and you can reject some things, you can recycle some things, and what was the other one?
You can accept other things.
Accept other things.
Speaking of your families of origin, like you're gonna have your new identity as your new family, but you come from two separate families of origin, so you're gonna accept some things, reject other things, and recycle some things.
Yeah, so it's really beautiful to like take what you need and like revamp some things. And so that's what we hope to do with our boys is, you know, we have learned lots of positives from both of our families, and you know, investing quality time, like spending time with your kids, being intentional. So yeah, we're on that journey ourselves.
Something that we reject is just that we're gonna have their life planned out for them. Whether or not people would admit that, I don't think it's a coincidence that, I wanna be careful how I say it, but you're kind of set up for like one way of life. Like if your education is, if you're anemic with your education, like you're gonna be very limited. If you get to the point where you want to do something that requires an education, if you have to go back and take remedial classes and your family's not necessarily encouraging that path, then it's gonna take a lot more effort if you were to choose something like that versus preparing them for whatever it is that they choose. Like getting them to a base level, for example, with their education, so that they could go on to something that requires further education and not feel awkward about being behind if that's the case. I think Jill and Derek today are just a couple who love Jesus Christ, who love each other and are just trying to figure out their way in the world and raise their family the best that they can.
We both have really seen our faith through this trial of our lives here. It kind of goes, like it wavers at times, but just we've really sought God together, and we've been through so much together. I mean, Derek losing his dad, all of those things that are really, really difficult times that we didn't feel like there was anything other than to seek Jesus in those moments. So I liked how my sister Ginger also talked about it, how she said like disentangling your faith, so kind of like sorting out what you believe and what things look like versus like what you've been taught. And I felt like that was a really helpful illustration also in this whole thing, in this whole process.
Has this process brought the two of you closer together?
Yeah, it has. So Ginger and I definitely have gotten closer through this process. I was very happy to put in there what this book is not, and it's not like me trying to like change my family or as a part of the reconciliation process. I'm not just bashing my family. I love my family. I think that's another reason why it's taken us so long to write this book. One, because we've been living our story, but two, also because I love my family and I really care about them, and it carried a lot of weight for me to be able to just even put these words into a book, and I wanted to do it accurately and carefully. So I know it isn't guaranteed to be well received, but yeah, I think we're playing the long game here and really just hoping for better relationships in the future, and hopefully people will find encouragement in their own stories, just by knowing they're not alone and helping them find their voice maybe.